Men, we've all faced moments where life drops us to our knees, and sometimes you wonder if you'll ever get back up. Today's guest says those moments aren't the end of your story, they're the turning point, but only if you have the courage to face one dangerous question: what now, God? Mark Schutter isn't here to give you surface level pep talks. He's a certified Kingdom Factor coach, life after coach, and the author of Cowboys Are Not Supposed to Cry. He's lived through profound personal loss, founded the Job 213 Project, and now leads Christian men and leaders throughout burnout, grief, and some of the toughest transitions. Mark, welcome to the men's room.
Thanks, Linda. I'm very excited to be here and have this conversation. You mentioned in the opening asking a dangerous question, what now, God? In my experience, this question can open doors and also provide an invitation to walk through what God's calling us to, whether you're a man or a woman. And there's things you just can't run away from. And that line is kind of paraphrased from the movie 1939 movie Stagecoach with John Wayne and Claire Trevor, one of my favorite movies. There are certain things we just can't run away from.
Absolutely. There's definitely things you can't run away from. And even if you could, you really shouldn't.
Right, exactly.
And so, we talked about the title of your book, Cowboys Are Not Supposed to Cry, and it pokes right at the heart of male conditioning. And so, my question is, what's the cost of that don't cry message for men? I mean, just straight up, what would you say?
What pops into my head immediately is isolation and loneliness and just uncertainty about life, about yourself, about your identity, where you're going. And that's something that I struggled with for many years. Thus, that title of my memoir, "Cowboys Are Not Supposed to Cry." There was a lot of societal expectations that I placed upon myself, both from family, friends, and society at large, of just even in the entertainment industry, of what a man's supposed to be when faced with loss and pain and tragedy, if you will. So that's kind of where it comes from. It's like, cowboys are not supposed to cry. But if you look, I kind of like look at the cover of my book, it is kind of a um I drawing a blank on the word, but the title is, you can see cowboys and the word cry in big letters, and then the are not supposed to is in small. So it's kind of subliminal that cowboys do cry. And that's the whole point of the book as I go through towards the end, that hey, it's okay for men to have emotions. It's okay to cry, even though society sometimes tells us to man up and just move on.
I really appreciate the fact that you wrote this book and you wrote it from your own experience,
Mhm.
and you did it because you wanted to change society's views, but then you also wanted to show how you showed up,
Right.
and how other men in your life, bringing them along the journey with you rather than being in that isolation. And so you said something key here, the not being in the isolation, because I
Hmm.
think that when we're experiencing our lowest points, we often find ourselves in isolation because we're not really sure how to ask someone
Right.
to see us where we're at in that moment, because we could be ashamed, embarrassed, frightened, scared, and not know what to do. And so that really struck a chord with me. It really personally did, seeing a man in those moments, um, and what to do, you know, from the other side. I mean, from that
Hmm.
observer that might be pulled into that place. And I found that the man that's crying out, that's in isolation, really wants to be seen in
Right.
that vulnerable moment. He wants you not to judge him. And he really does want that hand to reach out to you
Hmm.
or to him, and to like say, I've got you. We're gonna do
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah, the simple acknowledgement that, hey, I see you, I see you're hurting, and this sucks. I can't fix it. I can't have any words to fix it, but I at least acknowledge that you're struggling, that you're going through something, and I'll walk with you, I'll sit with you, whatever it takes. But sometimes it's even hard for men to go there because we acknowledge others' pain, and sometimes that brings up pain in ourselves too. So it's hard to go there sometimes.
You're absolutely right. Acknowledging other person's pain can and will bring up a lot of times your pain as well. And it's like, how do you like have that faith in those moments, whether you're the person that's reaching out because you need someone, or you're that person that's actually providing the support, let's say.
Uh, That for me personally, that's a daily walk, if you will, and it's a daily um, intentionality. Kind of interesting story. It's like, my faith in God has wavered at times, to be very honest with you. My first wife, when she died, we were both Christian believers, and I believe she's in a better place. Believe, that she's okay now. But I went through a period of time where I actually, in my words, I use God as a means to an end. If God's the way that I can get to her and see her again in heaven, then I'll believe in God, and I'll follow that because I can see her again. And then over the years, God started unraveling that onion, going, you need to believe in me first, not as a means to an end. So that kind of came to an end. But the faith part is, I believe that, Jesus is the same today, yesterday, and forever. So I rest in that we will be reunited once again. And a lot of the questions that I've had over the years that, I carry with me won't matter anymore. The answers to those questions won't matter, and those questions won't matter. So, but it is a daily struggle, and some days are better than others. So,
That's a good point, and that's the basis of faith is having
mhm,
the trust and the belief in what you don't know.
right,
And
exactly.
and so that's a hard one for a lot of people
Yeah,
to have that faith, especially in
mhm.
God,
Well,
because y- yeah,
yeah, it's
it
interesting because
relies a lot.
one of my friends actually said, and I love this, is that faith a lot of times seems very irresponsible. People are like, well, you can't do that. But you have faith in something that doesn't seem possible, doesn't seem responsible, doesn't seem, real. But that's what faith is. It's believing in the unseen, if you will. And then there's just to share a C.S. Lewis quote that I love about, there's far better things ahead than any we leave behind. So, and trying to remember that, and remind myself of that and believe in that.
That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that quote and your
Mhm.
personal thoughts on that. So we met, on over on LinkedIn,
Yep.
and I found out that you were actually in my home state, this
Right.
this neighbors, and so you had shared that you work with Christian leaders in business and in life, and, so that got me intrigued about
Yeah.
how that looks. And, one of the things I'm curious about is like when you're working with leaders in business and life, and you happen to be working with men, what's the real conversation men are afraid to have, both in the personal and the professional realms?
I think that the real conversation is over identity. And I speak to that. I say that because, I meet with men in a couple different venues. There's peer advisory groups that I run with Kingdom Factor as a Kingdom Factor coach, but then also co-facilitate a men's campfire through Wild at Heart Ministry, who are elders here locally. And so we have different types of men, if you will, but all Christians. And the identity piece is big, kind of like who we are in our belief in Christ, but also who we are in the workplace, in our homes, and that vulnerability to be real, that we don't have all the answers a lot of times because we're expected to have all the answers, or we're looked at to have all the answers. And I know there's sometimes the phrase that, I don't expect you to have all the answers, but there is an underlying current um, throughout culture that men are supposed to be leaders, and not that women can't be leaders either. I don't mean that at all, but it's just like, and we place that burden on ourselves a lot of times. Men do. We take on that mantle of, I should have all the answers. I should be able to fix this. I should be able to make a way. And that weighs heavily on men. And it weighs heavily to actually admit when we're falling short, especially in our own heart, that we feel like we're falling short. It's a hard truth to admit as men. So we turn to other things and addictions and those sorts of things. And that's a whole nother path you can go down, unfortunately.
So would you say that that identity and that strong, fast, uh, I guess, conditioning
Hmm.
that I've got all the answers. I don't need any help, and I got this. And that's what what leaders do. That's what men do.
Right.
They're the strong ones when maybe other people need help. And so, would you say that that would be, in your mind, what one of the number one things, that a stronghold that holds high performing men back in particular?
Yeah, I actually would. Yeah. Um, and that's kind of where, you know, from where I go and what I feel God's called me to is to create those spaces for men and women, if needed, but to come together, to come to a place where they can be vulnerable. They can let down those walls. They can let down the the woulds, the shoulds, the coulds, the have tos, and all those sorts of things, and just be real. There's actually, and I will botch this, and I apologize, but and I want to say it's in Samuel where there's a verse where King David is mourning, I think, the loss of Jonathan or the loss of his son. I cannot remember, and the prophet Nathan tells him that he needs to go speak to the people. And it was, I read that and I was like, so he's telling him he needs to deny his grief, basically. And as a leader, sometimes you have to do, and I don't want to say deny, but you have to like set it aside because I need to step up front and be a leader. And I was like, wow, that's a powerful moment where he's feeling very hurt, broken, vulnerable. Um, but he has to set that aside and step out and lead. And as men, though, we get caught in that trap of always setting it aside for somebody else. And so trying to create a space where men can be vulnerable, they can face those strongholds, um, renounce those lies, if you will, and go, what's the truth here? What is the truth here? That you're hurting, and that's okay, but we can get to the other side of that, you know.
I want to thank you, Mark, for creating that space for men to be
Thank you.
able to do that, because you said something important here, is that leaders often put their own needs and emotions aside
Hmm.
because they're in charge of leading. and and
Right.
when leaders consistently put their emotions aside to take care of other people, it becomes a conditioning, a habit. And when you don't return back to the space for yourself that you put out there for everybody else, then things really start to deteriorate in your life. And that's
Yeah.
both personally and professionally. And so, in my mind, it's like, how can we make this a new norm that, yes, there's
Hmm.
a time and a place to put things aside because of safety concerns, getting things done, and yet honor that leaders need, that man's need to also have that space. And
Yeah.
because with the what you've got going, I think it's great, but could there be more?
Yeah, I think there can always be more, but I think sometimes it's baby steps, and it's you know we are you made a comment about men falling into that space, and it's like because we are kind of the culmination of our daily habits, what we do, those disciplines that we follow, that becomes who we are, and it becomes so it's hard to change those things. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. you know um Culture will, the next big craze, and then it's here today and gone tomorrow. So it was truly change a belief system or change a culture, if you will, or a societal expectation takes time. They use the analogy of those huge cruise ships. They can turn on a dime, but they turn really, really slowly. If you ever watched one of them in port, they're not a little speedboat. They turn very, very slowly to go in a completely opposite direction because they're so large. And that's, I think, what it takes sometimes. And as men, we want the answers now. We're expected to have the answers now, and it's like that doesn't always happen. My experience, listening for God's still small voice is an act of discipline. It's an act of patience, and a lot of times because He doesn't always speak when we want Him to speak. But if we're patient enough, eventually, I believe He will speak to us. So,
You're right, that patience,
mhm.
that can be the trying, piece
Right.
there. And then really, you're right, all change, societal, and even what we want for ourselves does take time. And
Hmm.
the moment we wanna hurry up and wait, we're losing the battle there. And so
Right.
it's like, okay, well, the new way to go about it is to be patient and express compassion to yourself. That one right
Exactly.
there, the big C, compassion for yourself, as that cowboy.
Hmm.
um
Yep.
it can make or break everything. And really being an advocate for the change, and by being that person yourself. um and a lot of people wonder, and can I be that one person to make a change? Will it actually make a difference? And the
Right.
answer to that is yes. Just by you and I and anyone else in
Yep.
these, you see something that needs to get done or can benefit, you don't have to wait for somebody else to
Hmm.
to create it. Everyone can be a leader, everyone can initiate change. And why not make this new paradigm not be the flavor of the month? To
Right.
leaders can lead, and they can be leading as people, and people that
Yeah.
have needs as well, and honoring the space for that to happen, and moving away from the old way of leadership, which is you shelve things until it's time.
Exactly. Exactly. No, it's good. I mean, you made a comment in there about it taking time, and you can make a difference. And one of the things that I try to remind myself, and one of the things I struggle with, honestly, is sometimes it feels like you're just throwing rocks in the dark into a lake. But that rock is also sending out ripples, and you don't know who those ripples are going to touch. And one of my things is like, if I can touch one life, change one life, and that life can change one life, and that life can change one life, you're sending out ripples, and you're building momentum. And that's what it's all about. It's not about, groupthink. It's about who can I serve, who can I help, who can I support today in this moment, if you will. Is there one person out there that I can maybe give some encouragement to or some help to, and then they can return the favor in kind, and it just kind of builds on that.
Absolutely. And, that was one of the exciting things that came to me when we met, is that you embody and you do that. I mean, from the moment we spoke, you
Thank you.
spoke my language
Thank
about
you.
being that person that creates that ripple effect, being that person that shows up for someone. And you're
Hmm.
right, you maybe can't be out there for everyone, but you
Right.
certainly pick a person and be that peer accountability partner. I know we talk a lot about support systems, and without somebody to help us show up in the way we need to show up, that's beneficial to ourselves, not because
Yeah.
you have to show up in a certain way, but showing up to be beneficial for yourself. It's kind of like uh that one example, and it always works
Mhm.
wonders, and it's so simple. It's like whenever you're faced with a crisis or a problem, and you're at that crossroads of not knowing what to do, the moment you shift the narrative to, what would I tell my best friend? What would I tell someone in my social circle? What would I say to them to make a change? And
Right.
by doing that, you're able to see more clearly outside of yourself. And
Yeah.
so I feel like, anytime as people we have an opportunity to do that, but then to also do it for ourselves. I know we're talking
Hmm.
a lot about doing things for ourselves, because I think that that's the where we need to focus right now,
Hmm.
is doing more things for ourselves, and doing it with compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a sense of we're better for others when we're healthy and whole and healed, if you will. Um, uh, and that's again can be a daily struggle. It's a lifetime struggle, if you will. So like,
Well, it's one of those struggles that yes, it's present. And in life, we don't like come to a certain point, plateau, and say, I've made it,
right,
I'm there. We're always going to be learning and growing
absolutely.
and transitioning through all stages of life. And um I would like you to tell me a little bit more about your project, because it
Oh,
will touch upon this
mhm.
very issue that we've brought to the surface, in this conversation today.
Yeah, the project is the Job 213 project, and it's based on the Bible verse Job 213. And everybody's probably, even if you're not a believer, you've heard the story of Job, who, Satan came to God and he said, what about my servant Job? And God allowed Satan to test him, and he took everything Job had, every, family, livestock, all of his money, so he was left with nothing. Um, and there's a verse at the end of chapter 2 where, and I'm paraphrasing here, where it says, Job's three friends came to see him. They saw him from a long way off, and they came and they sat down on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights with no one speaking a word because they saw that his pain was very great. I read that and I went, we always just kind of like glossed over that, because in the very next chapter they start to tell Job starts to lament. They start to tell Job everything he's done wrong. You sinned, your wife sinned, your kids sinned. This is why all this stuff happening to you. And they just start blah blah. But I went back and went, for 7 days and 7 nights they sat on the ground with him. And I like to envision that they sat around a campfire. They didn't just sit on there. They sat around a campfire and no one spoke a word because they saw that his pain, it was presence. They were there in that moment with him. And I was just like, wow, have I ever done that for anybody? For 7 minutes, much less 7 days and nights. That's like an eternity in our world right now, where everything is like super fast. And I was just like, it really struck me. It's like, how can I offer that in some way or form? So that kind of undergirds everything I do. It's like a sense of presence, because I don't have all the answers. Yeah, I've walked through my own valley of the shadow, if you will. I'm still walking through it at times. We don't know if we ever get out of that valley completely. And I watched my first wife die from breast cancer, and and have moved forward, moved on. But it's like, how am I living that experience and helping others and coming alongside others, knowing that I don't have all the answers. I can't tell you, necessarily what you should do, but I can support and be there. And that's kind of where the Job 213 project comes in. It's like, how can I be a witness to your pain without trying to fix your pain? Because that is one thing that I kind of go back to too, is like, people want to fix your pain. Like, no, I need to feel this right now. And it's okay to feel this right now. And it's okay to carry this for the moment. It's okay to be in this in the moment, because it hurt. I can't deny it. I can't push it away. I can't make it all better. And a lot of people want to do that. They want to just, push it away and have you move on. So that's kind of where the joke is. It's like, let's come and I'll sit next to you in silence for as long as it takes. Hopefully I can make it 7 days and 7 nights, but you never know. So that's kind of the Job 213 project in a nutshell.
And that's really powerful because, you know, when somebody is at that bottom of the valley in that hard place, they
Hmm.
actually don't want you to fix. They
No,
don't want you to judge.
right.
They want you to sit with them.
Hmm.
And and it could be silence. And you could just be
Right.
sitting there in silence. You're present. And the wanting to make things go away, that's just that uncomfortableness
It
of
is.
somebody
Absolutely.
else's pain. And so
Yep.
it's really hard to not want to remove that pain, but feeling with another person and sitting with that,
Yeah.
if you can do that for even 7 minutes, I guess, um,
Right.
if you can do that for 7 minutes, just be in that presence and let it be,
Hmm.
let things happen, let the emotions come.
Right.
I will tell you that that is the thing that that person needs.
Yeah.
And and and
Absolutely.
and there's
And it's not an easy thing to do, because
it's not.
we have to set aside our own expectations, our own wants, needs, desires. I want to help. I want to fix this. I want to be there for you. Like, set those aside. This is not about you right now. This is about them, and just be there, if you will. So yeah, so that's where it came from. Like I said, like, they sat down on the ground, and that's the other thing. Is like, they didn't say, Joe, get up, come on, let's get up and let's go out, let's go do this. It's like, no, they got down to his level on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. So pretty
Yeah.
powerful. For me, it was very powerful. It was a powerful verse that I think I've never heard a sermon preached on it. I've never heard, I was like, wow, it really struck me. It really struck me.
I absolutely love that you shared this with me
Thank
because
you. Thank
I'm
you.
thinking I'm thinking that you have just given the sermon that maybe you thought should be given and never has. You
Who
just did
knows?
it right there. And I'm thinking this is the most beautiful thing I've heard about the story because you're right. You hear the verse, you've heard this story.
Right.
The way you put that into words just now with that emotion, with that presence just
Mm.
taking us through that, that moved me. I mean, I think
Thank
you
you.
can probably tell that it has.
Thank
Um,
you.
and so, and so the other thing that, you speak to and you say it differently. And, a lot of times we will say, why me, God?
Hmm.
Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Why do I have to go through this? And you are advocating for the phrase, what now, God? So
Right.
would you share what you mean by that for our listeners? 'Cause I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's again kind of a personal story. It's morphed for me because I asked those why me questions. It's like why me? Why is this happening to me? And that kind of morphed into, I've heard sermons preached on why not me? Because we all have things we deal with in our lives. So why not me? Why am I special that something shouldn't happen to me? But it then morphed into what now, God? Or another kind of way to say that is, God, what are you up to in all this? What are you doing now? Because there's things he sees. His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. They're higher than ours. And it's like, okay, you're up to something that I can't see right now, that I don't understand. So what now? And that just trusting that he has a plan. I mean, Proverbs 16:9 talks about, a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Trying to remember that, okay, he's got a plan for my life. He's directing my steps. I don't see the path always in front of me, but I'm walking through that and just asking him, what's he up to? And I look at that a lot of times as an invitation. That God's inviting me into something. He's inviting me into something big with him. But I have to be open to that. I have to accept the invitation. So often we get invitations like, oh yeah, I'm not going to go to that party. I'll RSVP and say I can't make it or whatever, or I'm not going to go out. Um, but these are invitations that we should accept because we don't know what's on the other side. And so that's kind of where that comes from. It's like, what now, God? And it leads me personally to live more of a sense of anticipation rather than expectation. I don't expect things to happen. I anticipate what God's going to do. He's going to do something great in my life, in the life of others. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It may be very difficult. I may have to, face my own giants. I may have to, you know, um, spend 40 years in the desert. Who knows? But it's like that anticipation that it's it's something beyond myself, if you will. So
Thank you for that. Like I said,
yeah.
this is important because I wanted this message to come out, and you put it out there in a way that a lot of us can see more clearly, and that's about that anticipation,
Hmm.
that curiosity.
Yes.
That's why we would want to say, what now, God? Because the other one is more of that, why is this happening to me?
Right.
And so it puts you,
It's
you're not in an empowered state. What now, God empowers you to be open and accepting of whatever it's going to come. And you may not know the timing, you may not know the direction, you may not
exactly.
know a lot, but eventually that faith in God will bring you to the point you're like, ah, I had
Ah,
to experience this to realize this,
yes.
or I would never have made a change had I not experienced these things. And
Hmm.
and so really that's what it's about. And another thing that I wanted to ask you is, when you are guiding men to align their purpose, their
Hmm.
faith, and their leadership, a lot of society, we are obsessed with image, success,
Right.
and perceptions of what people think of us. So, how do you get a man to think more about leading with intentional integrity?
Very good question. And it changes depending on the situation, depending on the conversation, but kind of like overarching is Um, perception in my asking people, asking different people to describe an object. Everybody describes it differently. Like if I ask you to describe an apple, picture an apple in your mind. You could ask five different people to describe that apple. Some people are going to say it's red. Some people are going to say it's green. Some people are going to say it's hanging on a tree. Some people are going to say it's sitting on a table. They're all going to have different perceptions of that. So perception sometimes is a little bit of an illusion in my mind. So then going a step further and asking the question of, um, you're on your deathbed and you're taking your last breath. What really matters? Does the perception of how you dressed, car you drove, the house you lived in, does that matter? Because those are perceptions. They're founded in reality, but they're still, people are looking at that, perceiving it in a certain way, and you have no control over that. So what's really important is your integrity, how you lived your life, how you served others, how you helped others, and that's kind of like having that conversation going from there of, um, how can you do that better, even, you know? How do you feel you're doing now? And being really honest with yourself. Um, Again, and I have this tendency to quote lines from movies, but there's another Western movie where they talk about deserving, and a character says, we all deserve's got nothing to do with it. We don't deserve what we get. We're lucky we get what we get. And then another line is that a character says, well, he had it coming. And the other character says, we all got it coming. It's coming for all of us. And I was like, oh yeah, it is. But we forget that. We think, well, he had it coming. It's all, blah, blah, blah. And that's part of our, unfortunately, the division in our society sometimes. But kind of back to that individual of what's important in aligning your faith, you know, um, because I went through a period of time where it's like, you know, um, people believe in an afterlife, you know, that when you die, there's an afterlife, whatever your version of that is, if you will. And I have my belief in heaven and being reunited, but then there's also a life after. And what I mean by that is a life after the trauma, the tragedy, the event. Are you living your life after in the right way? Or are you just waiting for the afterlife? And then how you live your life after is going to impact your afterlife, I believe. So that's kind of a long, long story. And um, it kind of comes back to identity, and I'll end on this of, we I think we all reckon and we struggle, both men and women, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we struggle with who we believe we are, um, who we want to be, and then who we were actually created to be, and then trying to connect those three dots, if you will, who we are, who we wish we were, and who we were actually created to be. So
That is such a powerful way to look at everything that we've talked about
yeah.
today. And it really it just goes back to, again, that compassion for yourself to be able
Yeah.
to step into that space where those three things can be thought
Mhm.
about. And so you just, yes, I was going to ask you what you wanted to leave for a message, and I don't have to because you beat me to it. And so, one of the things that, really important for my work on the men's room show
Mhm.
is the fact that when individuals such as yourself come on the show and we discuss things that are, on a lot of our minds, and we want support after the show. We watch the show, we take in all of the things, we may even watch it on replay to go back to those moments where
Moment.
we really grabbed on something. But there's a time and a space where you want to have an individual that you can reach out to,
Mhm.
so that way you can take in more of what you just experience. And really your project I believe is one of those.
Thank you.
And so I want to share the Job 213 or Job 213 project, and I want to be able to put that in the show notes. And so, how else can people get in touch with you if they would like to be a part of that project, to come to your campfire circles?
Yeah.
How can they do that?
Easiest way is, I have my website, markshutter.com. Just, just like my name will be in the show notes, but just how it's spelled. Also, mshutter.kingdomfactor.us. That's my Kingdom Factor coaching website. Um, both of them have contacts where you can reach out and contact me through the website. The Kingdom Factor website actually has a scheduling system too, where if you want to, and this is free, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, you want to just chat for 30 minutes, I'm there for you. It's not trying to sell you anything. It's just like, hey, let's connect sort of thing. I'm on social media, LinkedIn, all Instagram, Facebook. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. You can always message me there. Um, and I will absolutely return the message. So those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me. There is some information about the Job 213 project on my website. There's a link to it on my LinkedIn page in the resources section, plus some other resources, a little connection about I do like I said, I do the help facilitate a monthly campfire with another gentleman for Wild at Heart. And then I also do a weekly, what I call grief campfire, where it's 15 minutes of silence, basically. I'm the only one that talks. I'm the only one that's on video for a very short period of time. I host those every Thursday morning. Those are free for anybody to come, 15 minutes. It's like you can squeeze it into your day. And it's just a spot, we posed a couple questions for you to just contemplate and think about and pray about if you want to. There's some information on that also on my LinkedIn resources and on my website. So I'm available and I'm out there if you want to get a hold of me.
Thank you for sharing all the ways that our viewers can get a hold of you. I
You're
think that the
welcome.
work that you do is incredible. It's needed, and God certainly using you as that person that can be that person for that person that's needing somebody. And so you are absolutely making a ripple effect. I am pleased to know you, and the fact that you are
Thank you,
again
Linda.
in my community. That's even better yet. I
Yes.
am you be
Yep.
sending people your way that need to know you. And so
Great.
that
Yeah.
this concludes, this edition of the Men's Room Show. And like Mark, if you'd like to be a guest, reach out to us and we will have a call to go over the logistics of what will happen. And from there, yeah, we will we'll be happy to have you on the Men's Room Show. And with that, we'll see you next time. Thank you.